Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's LinkedIn Live. I couldn't be happier to have today's guest, Cameron Deatsch, who is the CRO of Atlassian, a company that I think most of us are familiar with. But for those that aren't, about 10,000 people now at Atlassian. I have an international group of customers, over 250,000 at last count for me. They build tools like Jira, Confluence, Bitbucket, Trello, all focused on supporting teams across the world. And as you know, I am heavily focused on high performance teams. So very interested in both what Atlassian does and how they do it. Thanks so much for joining us today,
Yeah,
Cameron.
thanks for having me. And it sounds like you already know everything about us. So thank you for the intro. It's great.
Yes, well, I'm a big fan. I'll just say your company for quite some time, starting with, of course, your ticker signal team, which, as I say, is the work that I do, is building high performing teams. So you certainly have made a big difference in the lives of my customers, and that's what's made me a fan. So let's just start. You just had your 20th anniversary, which seems incredible. I know that Atlassian is well respected, and I think, as I told you earlier, maybe a little jealous of your go to market model. Can you describe the model, sort of how it came to be and what makes it different?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah. And so, like I said, the company was founded in 2002 by Mike and Scott, our co-CEOs and co-founders, with the mission of, at that time, to not have to wear a suit to work. Literally, that was the
Great.
why they created the company. They're out of Australia, Sydney, Australia, as software engineers. The reality at that time, they kind of had a choice: go work for a telco, or go work for a bank, or go do their own thing. And they didn't want to wear suits to work to go to telcos or banks, so they started, very entrepreneurial, started their own company and go through that history. But basically created a product called Jira, still very much our flagship product today. We have many more products, but I think 2002, we had just come out of the kind of bubble, blew up, raising capital as a couple of engineers, 22 years old in Sydney, Australia, was nearly impossible. And they were largely building software for themselves, kind of for software development teams to track issues, track work for their software development. And at that time, if you think of 2002, like, they were looking across the internet for tools they needed to get their work done. And they realized that it was nearly impossible, one, to get access to software. Like, you go to IBM at the time, that website, you couldn't download software from any site. SaaS wasn't really a thing. So there was just all these walls between them and solutions. And even when they tried to get to a salesperson or what have you, they immediately got qualified out because, two guys in Australia don't have much budget. So like, how do we solve this? So they basically were forced to go, how do we solve? Well, let's just get our tools online, make sure people have access to them. So they post online. They realized they had to have a big market if they're going to do things online. So they basically said, hey, we got to think global from day one. This is where AdWords, I don't think they even called it AdWords. They started doing some Google search engine stuff very early, 2002, to get that distribution. And they priced really, really, really low, because they basically said, hey, we're not going to be able to hire tons of salespeople. We don't have capital. We're not going to be able to hire customer success or implementation. So like, the reality is we shouldn't even have to have a pricing discussion. We should make it so inexpensive and so easy to use that people can just download it, try it, and buy it. In like one of their best stories, like very early on, like within 6 to 12 months, they just got a check in the mail from, it was one major U.S. airline. I forget exactly one. It was like, I don't want to quote it wrong, but they literally just got a check one day for like $10,000. The customer, they never even knew the customer used the software. And I can imagine if I was 22 years old and I got a $10,000 check one day, I'd be like, great. Like, I probably would, like, granted, they just doubled down. They invested that back in the business.
They didn't go to the beach. They doubled down.
They did not.
But it's so interesting, right? $10,000 for a major airline is a number you don't have to think about. So to your point, yeah.
So that's how they started, and the business evolved over that. It really was a self-serve, direct, flywheel, bottoms-up business. We didn't hire our first commission seller till 2014, so 12 years in the business existence. We really built a great online experience, still the core of our business today, supported with a large channel. So we did have solution partners and many other people out there in the market, but from a direct seller perspective, it's like a relatively new muscle within Atlassian. But as we've grown and we are a multi-billion-dollar company, it's not $10,000 with those airlines anymore. It's more like $10 million. So it's worth having those deeper relationships that we have today while balancing that flywheel direct businesses at our core.
Yeah. Wow. It sounds like such a highly efficient sales process. I know you also make great use of the channel. Can you talk about that relationship and how that works in your model?
Yeah, so we have over 700 solution partners worldwide. Many of these have been with us since 2004, 2005. If you think about very early on, that whole human engagement of, hey, Atlassian, we want you to do a demo. Hey, Atlassian, can you do currency for us? Hey, Atlassian, can you respond to this RFP? Or hey, Atlassian, we'd love you to, can you help us with installation configuration? All of those capabilities, since we really just wanted to focus on building great software, we largely looked to our partners at the time. Many were coming to us because they were just fans of our products, small little boutique teams that are now really big firms. And we just said, hey, listen, like we can largely outsource that engagement in those early years, all of that hand to hand with those customers. As we continue to focus on the software, our channel would focus on delivering all that value add of implementation, pre-sales, you name it. Very much the model today as we've grown. Obviously, many of our partners have grown with us into multi-$100 million revenue businesses, become not boutiques, but like largely large SIs. And in addition to that, as we've gotten bigger and our customers have gotten bigger, we've also started to partner with the global system integrators like Accenture. I effectively tell every single large customer, first question I ask when it is like, do you have a partner engaged? And if they say no, I say, why not? Like, let's get a partner in. Everything I do from a go-to-market perspective is really to encourage our customers, especially our enterprise customers, to have at least some relationship with our solution partners.
Great. Well, your channel must love you with that
Some
sort
days.
of an attitude. Okay.
Hopefully.
Maybe we can go with most days.
Yeah.
So given this approach for go-to-market, I'm imagining that gives you a relatively low cost of sales, which accounts for your being able to spend more in R&D and other parts of the business. How has that evolved, and how does that play into your ability to innovate?
Back to the core of the model here. So just as a public company, you can actually see all this stuff, but we roughly run all of our sales and marketing expense in kind of the mid-teens as a percentage of revenue. So 15 or 16%, which if you look to any other of our peers, we're kind of half to a third, especially with our growth rates that you have at. This allows us to invest much more in R&D, right? And you look at this kind of 35%, 40% of our revenue, we invest in R&D. This is actually self-perpetuating and allows us to keep our prices low, allows us to focus on our self-serve model. And I think the best value prop I can have for a customer is for every dollar you spend with Atlassian, you get more engineering. Like you're buying us because you're buying software from us. For every dollar, you're not spending half of that on sales and marketing so that you buy more from us. You're spending half that really on engineering product to get you a better experience. That becomes this virtuous loop, but it also forces us to be extremely disciplined in how we think about growing our business. Obviously, like 10 years ago, we could have hired 10,000 salespeople. We could have grown faster, right? But we could have grown unprofitably. We probably could have saturated the market way quicker in our customer base. We could have potentially made a variety of mistakes. So we've always been patient and diligent with our growth. We always think sustained growth, think for the long term. Mike and Scott want this to be a 100-year company. So we're exceedingly disciplined about how we think about new investments going forward. And, and I've been here for 10 years. We really try to be stewards of this unique model we have. And it's really interesting how easily you can erode the model with a set of small decisions. And that's something that we really try and defend and codify into our business.
Yeah, well, that's certainly something I experienced at the startup that I was part of as it grew to 15 billion, I think, by the time I left. But a series of small decisions that no one would have thought, oh, this is going to have a big impact on the business, but it does erode, or it slows the flywheel in some way, or has some other negative impact. So great to hear that you're super aware of that.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about teamwork, right? So I love your company's mission, which is unleashing the potential of every team. I mean, who doesn't want to get up every morning and do that? What are some ways that you are helping your clients do this in today's economy, in today's environment?
Yeah, when we look at the two big trends in the market that every company of every size is largely dealing with right now, one is this digital transformation trend, or however you want to label it. I just say is people using technology to transform how they deliver value to their customers, right? And that's been, it's been a constant journey ever since software was created, but it's become even more accelerated over the last few years, right? And the other big transformation that we see, the big cultural change, is cultural transformation, largely as many businesses have gone to fully remote, many have gone hybrid, many have come back, but the reality is, I think we'll all agree, we're never going to work how we all worked before. Work has changed. Now we help both those, like we basically ride both those changes. Digital transformation has really been core of the business. One of the things that made Atlassian's product so sticky and so powerful is that we really become that source of truth and that bridge between largely your software development teams. We're trying to ship new capabilities to evolve your business, and this massive business organization that's trying to basically take those capabilities and deliver value to the customers. So Audi, large car manufacturer. I don't know if you've been in an Audi lately, but you're driving a computer, right?
Yeah,
Multiple computers. They have over 6,000 engineers, designers, product managers, largely gathering requirements, tracking issues, tracking requirements from customers, it's gathering all that information and then turning that into largely capabilities that they're building into their navigation, how the brakes work, how the regenerative power works in their electric vehicles, you name it. That entire very complex process of building complex software applications that are core to the value they provide their customers is managed on Atlassian products. A less highly technical one, broadcast. So Sony Music Publishing. Like I think Sony has this huge catalog. That catalog, and they're always constantly adding to that catalog. They have individual publishing rights around all that. They need to manage that entire process of gathering the catalog, updating the catalog, and ensuring that all of their producers are being compensated correctly. They manage that massive collaboration challenge. They manage all of that within Atlassian products today, and many, many more. So those are very complex exercises. We also have companies that simply use this with like a team of 10, and all of our software is free for up to 10 users. You're a small startup, 10 people, you just want to get on the right page of, hey, we're going to kick off a project. Let's document our goals for the project. We have those type of activities as well for, tens of thousands of customers.
And you'll be there for them as they grow. So there you are. That's great.
Absolutely.
All right. You mentioned how we're working differently today. I've read that Atlassian has something called a Team Anywhere policy, which is an intentional approach to distributed work. Can you say a little bit more about that, and how has it impacted the company's productivity and growth from your viewpoint?
Yeah. So first off, being headquartered out of Sydney, Australia, by nature, we became a distributed company. We have offices around the world. Obviously, Sydney's still our major headquarters, but we have offices in the Bay Area, San Francisco, Boston, Austin, New York, Ankara, Turkey, Amsterdam. Like, we're all around the world.
Right.
But we were very office focused prior to COVID. We had acquired a company called Trello about 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And Trello was
Trello before. Yeah. Great company.
Great product, tens of millions of users on the Trello platform. But Trello was a remote first company, which was good because they actually brought in more of that. They had figured out how to work remotely, and they brought that remote DNA into Atlassian well before COVID hit a couple of years ago. So we had a set of rituals, routines. Now we were still very office focused, but we had remote teams. We knew how to work with them. Very early on in the COVID adventure we all went through, Mike and Scott made a clear statement to the entire business of, you don't have to go back to the office. Right? And I think you saw that was one very, very real. It didn't take them a year. They just, like, in the first couple of months, they made that call of, you don't have to go back to the office. In fact, we are going to embrace remote work as a primary way to work. And that's going to open up our ability to recruit more. We can basically recruit farther away from offices in more regions, more countries, more states, you name it. It's all going to bring us in more talent. It will provide more flexibility in how we work. And we think in the end, is going to make our employees happier and more productive. So that was the statement we made. Of course, we had to bring a whole program behind that. And we put a whole dedicated teams of, okay, now how do we collaborate? What are our new rituals? What are our new routines? How we budget for, hey, we still want people to get together. So how do we budget for all of that travel? Big question mark. Versus having everyone in the same office. And when people do get together in person, do we want them just working the whole time, or do we want them to actually do what we call intentional togetherness? Actually make sure that a good portion of that time is literally just building bonds and not, it socially, where you used to get that in the office, that is hard to get over a Zoom screen, and those are the type of investments we've made along the time. Additionally, we had to think about, basically time zones become a major issue. Now, once again, we were a global company to begin with, so was it too hard? But we had to think of these core teams and these time halos to make sure that we had enough overlap. So if you're on a team, you can't move to the other side of the world, but yeah, you can move to the East Coast in the States if you're not, so we always had to think about that overlap and those rules of where you can and can't move. Cool. Complex, we're still evolving it. Mike's the best way. It's a very Atlassian thing. It's like, we're not just going to get it right and that's the program. We actually have a very Atlassian approach. We are going to continue to iterate and iterate and iterate and improve, as we try and get these new rituals and largely rules of how
Great.
we operate in the business.
Yeah. So recognition, there's no steady state in the world. Glad to hear it. Yeah, I mean, I think about trying to coordinate my own clients with Australia, Pacific, East Coast, Europe. I think this idea of a time halo is genius. So thank you. I'll borrow that. We'll put that into use elsewhere. Sorry, the gardeners have shown up. What I used to call the landscapers, I've now learned to call gardeners. So you'll have a little background noise.
No worries on my end.
Great, thanks. So what's next for Atlassian, sort of from a big picture standpoint? Where are you going? Yeah, how will you continue to support teams as they evolve?
Yeah, way over. I was roughly around the 500th employee at the company. We have over 10,000 today. So we are continuing to grow and scale, even through this macroeconomic uncertainty. We were around in 08, 09 recession, and we actually saw that. And we looked back, that was actually a major turning point for us accelerating our business. We see these type of downturns as an opportunity to invest and grow our overall market share. So that's what we're doing right now. We are investing rapidly to grow our businesses. We think of the world in kind of three big markets: software development, agile and DevOps, IT service management, and broader work management collaboration capabilities. And in each one of those are multi-billion-dollar market opportunities with hundreds of millions of users. So we are investing in all three of those. We have a big event. Our large user conference is called Team 23. It's in Vegas in a couple months. We'll have some big announcements there related to new products like Jira Product Discovery for product management, Compass for helping large DevOps teams manage complex DevOps infrastructure, and some other cool things potentially worth talking about. So we will constantly be innovating and constantly trying to be growing those three big markets that we are in.
All right, we'll look forward to hearing more about that as it unfolds. I also want to talk a little bit about you. We've talked about the business and how the business works. And curiosity is a term that has come up a lot in my talks with other executives. And I hear through the culture you've described at Atlassian, this state of constant inquiry. How's the role of curiosity and continuous learning helped you on your own leadership journey?
That was a great question. So the one advantage at Atlassian, for my 10 years here, I think I've had 6 different jobs, from go to market to sales to marketing, so I've been in R&D, growth teams, you name it. And one, I've been lucky that a company that's, largely would let me do those type of transitions across different organizations. But when you get into these roles, it's like you come in, you have to start kind of blank. You can learn and read and try and just coach your teams, but also learn a ton from the teams that you start hiring. And that's my biggest thing is I remember we started the analytics and data science function, 9 years here in my team. And, teams were talking about ETL, like all these new terms. And I said, help explain this to me. What you really get to, like in business overall, the term I hate the most is best practices. You know what? This is best practices. I'm like, if there was a set of best practices in business, everyone would be doing them and everyone would be successful. But there's I think it's there's least worst decisions, most often than not.
There you go. That's great. Yeah.
And the only way you can get that is simply by asking a ton of questions internally with smart people that you work with, externally. There's more information than we know what to deal with out there. So there is information out there, but only if you have that context around that information, that you can make the right decisions. And that requires lots of questions and lots of research. And then when you do make a decision finally, and no decision is perfect, at least you're doing it with, a ton of context of the different directions you can make.
Yeah, terrific. Yeah, best decision in the time available with the information available, and asking questions is absolutely the way to get there. So are there other leadership lessons you've learned along the way that you'd like to share? My general focus is on leadership and leadership strategy, so I know people would be particularly interested in hearing from you on those topics.
Yeah, I'm far from a leadership expert here. I'll just tell you, from my many failures, what I have learned. That's for better word. So the big one I have found, especially as we've scaled, when you're a 500 person startup, you can operate, communicate, collaborate in a certain way. In a 10,000 person organization that we hired 2,000 new people in the last year, you have to continue to evolve how you communicate, how you operate, how you show up. You realize that broadcast becomes bigger and bigger. And if you're not crystal clear in your communications, things can go awry. People can take that to separate decisions and go, how did that even make? My biggest one though is to kind of fight that corporate smush that you can put over everything and truly be genuine, be human with your people. And mine, what that means to me is like, got to champion the successes. Like, we got great stuff. Be like, champion them, really own the mistakes. Like, hey, I made a wrong decision. This is how I made that decision. Here's why I made that decision to be good, but really own that, and show that, hey, that was a human decision. This is imperfect. And then really explaining that context of decisions and directions that we get to, back to like, based off the research, like talk to people, like not just saying, hey, we made a decision and we're going, but really bring people along for that journey. And I think that's really that genuineness that people can trust you, even as you get there. I think my second big one, the biggest thing I've learned is your team is everything. Like, and as a leader, do you have the right trust in your team? Do you truly trust, not just do they trust you, but do they trust each other implicitly? Right? You don't want and if you have your teammates on like kind of battling for resourcing, what have you, I've seen that before. And it's one of those like, no, I need them largely come to the right conclusions before coming to me to break a tie. And also know when you don't have the right team, whether that's individuals, whether that's the structure. And that's really, really hard to change, especially if you've grown with the team over multiple years. But every once in a while, you got to take a step back. Is this the right team for what we need to accomplish going forward? And be brave enough to change it. And that's hard.
Yeah. Oh, I love that word, brave. It is hard, right? Because they've been a valuable team member in the past, but they may not be. I always think two things. Is it someone who can be developed or wants to develop, and do I have time to develop them? And all those things are not always the case when you're growing as quickly as a company like Atlassian is. So I love this idea of being brave. Also, you're talking about how your team works and you want it to work. They have to trust each other. They have to assume good intent about each other. And that's one of the things I think gets lost as we are remote and we haven't built, in all cases, the social capital that you described building, right? When you come together and you know somebody in these sort of a multi-dimensional way rather than in a Zoom box, you begin to trust them more because you know more about them. And so all of the opportunities to do that are so important.
Yeah, honestly, on that point, I find nothing better than a really hard project.
Yes.
Where you just basically force them into a room. Like you can say, just go be nice to each other. Like the reality is, if they have a shared goal, right, and are going to celebrate the win, but like that really, whatever it is, like the biggest, like that's where bonds are made at 11 o'clock at night. Oh my God, how are we going to solve this problem? And then they do. All of a sudden, that trust gets so deep. So, that's one tactic I've tried to use to build those bonds.
Yeah. Terrific. Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah. And it has to be a hard problem, right? They have to overcome an obstacle together to share the win. So terrific. So one last question for you, Cameron. The tagline for my business is up and to the right, because that's the spot on the 2x2 matrix where we always want to be. Was there a moment in your career when you knew that you'd be successful, when you were moving up into the right, sort of directionally correct to that spot?
Well, it's once again another great question. I'll use a quote from my father, which is, I'd rather be lucky than good, continuously. And that's a constant conversation that we've had. And listen, I've been very lucky along the way. I was lucky that I landed an internship at a company called BEA 20 years ago. And, the VP of my division, was the president of Atlassian that hired me here. Like, I was lucky to have that combination. I've been lucky to be part of two companies that have gone public. Like, how many software companies actually go public out there? And the fact that I've been able to. So like, there's a big luck part of this. I can't say there was a moment in my career where it's like success, but I'd say there's a series of stages where I'm like, oh, wow, this is interesting. So yeah, I'll tell you, like when I got that first internship, I was in San Francisco, Sansom and Clay, like 12th floor, looking out at Coit Tower. And I sat down as an intern. I'm like, I've made it, like, it's like, I'm a businessman. Like, that was huge. I had software, my last startup. I had, won the Employee of the Year award, the J Award, they called it, which was an awesome, like it's those series of stages. And then at Atlassian, when they invited me to join the exec team as a public company, were all major moments in my career. Yeah. So I there's not one moment, but a series.
Yeah, great. Well, I appreciate that you acknowledge the role of luck has for all of us. And you don't sound like someone who's failed upwards. You sound like someone and I know people like that. You sound like someone who's worked your way up. So congratulations on all your success. Thanks so much for taking time to be with us today, and wishing you and your team the best. Take good care.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.